This is the ninth gate of Kamosaka Zen, known as the Gate of No Gate. This is Dharma talk number 5. It's about the ninth ox herding picture, return to the source, and the practice of letting go. In the Zen tradition, rich in its use of metaphor and imagery, it offers numerous tools for understanding the nature of the human mind and its journey towards awakening. And one of the most iconic and profound representations of this journey is this series of the 10 ox herding pictures, which visually depicts the stages of enlightenment. These images, based on the teachings of Chinese Zen, they offer a roadmap to spiritual awakening through both their symbolism and the emotions that they invoke. The ninth ox herding picture, known as returning to the source, is particularly significant in the depiction of the almost final stage of the Zen path, the realization of the true self and the return to the original state of purity and spontaneity. It encapsulates a profound moment of letting go, which is an essential concept in Buddhism, and highlights the necessity of non-attachment in the pursuit of awakening. And it's in the context of the ox herding pictures and the ninth picture, it represents a moment of profound realization and return. The image typically shows the practitioner now fully enlightened, walking away from the ox, which is no longer tethered by force or attachment or pursuit or grasping. In the earlier pictures, the practitioner's efforts were focused on capturing and taming the ox, which symbolized the untamed mind, the delusions and the desires that cloud the true nature of the self. But as the practitioner progresses through the stages, they develop a greater mindfulness, a greater discipline and understanding, which ultimately realizing that the ox was never really separate from themselves, that their true nature was always present and was always whole. However, in the ninth picture, the practitioner does not return to the ox, nor does the image depict the continual struggle. Instead, the practitioner simply walks away, representing the relinquishment of all striving, including the very notion of enlightenment as a goal. Because the ox is no longer needed, because the journey of the seeker has come to its natural conclusion. This stage symbolizes the deep realization of the emptiness of all constructs, including the spiritual construct themselves. So the practitioner's return to the source, often interpreted as the return to the original nature or to the unnameable essence of the universe, it suggests a complete release of attachments, release of expectations, a release of desires. This final stage of the ox herding pictures is deeply connected to the concept of letting go, which is central to Buddhist practice. The idea of letting go is not a renouncement of life nor an abandoning of the world, but rather about releasing attachment to the self and to the myriad mental constructs that simply define the individual. So in the ninth ox-herding picture, the practitioner's return to the source makes the letting go of all dualities, and the duality between self and other, and the duality between practice and realization, and the duality between effort and ease, just gone. Letting go is this cornerstone in the Buddhist practice, and it appears in many contexts within the tradition. At its core, letting go refers to the cessation of attachment, the habitual clinging to desires, identities, beliefs, and even the clinging to experiences. In Buddhism, attachment is seen as the root cause of suffering. Now, in the Buddha's teachings of the Four Noble Truths, it makes it clear that suffering arises from desire, and it's through the cessation of desire that one can attain liberation, or nirvana. So letting go does not mean an abandonment of the world, of one's responsibilities, but refers to releasing to the attachment of outcomes, to the self-concept, and the idea that one's happiness depends on external circumstances. It's about loosening the grip on the ego and the sense of control that comes from the illusion of separation between oneself and the rest of the world. So letting go in this sense is a process of aligning oneself with the natural flow of life and simply allowing things to unfold without forcing or resisting them. And it's in this way letting go becomes not a negation, but rather a deep acceptance and realization of the impermanence and interdependence of all things. So the practice of letting go can be seen in numerous Buddhist disciplines, from meditation to mindfulness, to the cultivation of virtues such as compassion, generosity, and patience. It can be seen in meditation, where the practitioner is often encouraged to observe thoughts, emotions, and sensations, and to do so without attachment or identification. And by simply noticing them as they arise and as they pass away, the practitioner trains the mind to release the grip on them. And it's this process of non-attachment that is integral to the cultivation of wisdom and insight, and leading the practitioner to realize the impermanent, the unsatisfactory, and the non-nature of all phenomena. And then in the Zen tradition, letting go is often framed through the concept of non-doing, also known as wu-wei, which refers to the practicing of allowing things to unfold naturally, without excessive influence or forced effort. It is the realization that enlightenment is not something to be achieved or acquired, but rather something to be allowed to emerge through the cessation of striving. And this is particularly captured in the Zen teaching that the more you try to grasp the ox, the more it will slip away. So in this ninth ox-herding picture, the act of walking away from the ox, it symbolises the cessation of the struggle and the acceptance that the mind's natural state is already enlightened, and the release of any further effort or desire. It's not required anymore. So we look to see the interconnection of this ninth oxiding picture. That can be understood as an allegory for the practice of letting go. Because throughout the journey of the previous pictures, the practitioner moves from ignorance and confusion, represented by the wild ox, to a state of controlled discipline, and is then eventually achieving insight into the ox's true nature. Yet, in this ninth picture, the ox no longer needs to be controlled or tamed, because the practitioner realizes that the ox is not separate from themselves. See, the ox is a reflection of the mind, and the mind is not something to be grasped, tamed or captured. It is simply something to be understood, observed and released. And it's this release of attachment that is the key aspect in Buddhist awakening. And in letting go of the ox, the practitioner is letting go of the need for spiritual attainment or self-improvement. The ox has always been a symbol of the practitioner's own mental afflictions. And by walking away from it, the practitioner demonstrates the realization that the very act of chasing enlightenment was simply rooted in delusion. Because the true self was never lost, nor was it separate from the world. So the practitioner's return to the source simply reflects the recognition that enlightenment is not the destination, but a realization of the inherent purity and wholeness of being. And in Zen, letting go is not merely an intellectual understanding, but rather an experiential realization that transcends words and concepts. This is reflected in the act of walking away from the ox. The ox, in its fullness, symbolises the practitioner's mind is in all its complexity, and the return to the source is the return to the simplicity and the spontaneity of life before the conceptualization and dualistic thinking began to take hold. So returning to the source, in essence, is the practice or the practitioner's return to the present moment, free from the compulsion to grasp, to attain, to define. Letting go, embodied in the ninth oxiding picture, it also invites the practitioner to surrender the ego, or the ego's need for control and ownership. So in Buddhist practice, the ego is seen as a false construct, a collection of identities and beliefs that tends to blind a person to a limited view of reality. But this ninth picture symbolises the transcendence of the ego, as the practitioner walks away from the ox and returns to the source. So this return to the source is a return to the vastness of the universe, where there is no longer a self to hold on to, but only the interconnected flow of life itself. And this concept of letting go in Zen, it is ultimately led or lightly tied to the notion of spontaneity. And Zen teachings emphasize the importance of direct, uncontrived action, acting in accordance with the present moment, without premeditated or self-consciousness. So it's in this sense letting go is not an act of forceful renunciation, but rather a natural unfolding of the self in harmony with the world that surrounds us. And it's this spontaneous effort, its quality, is what makes the ninth oscillating picture so profound. Because the practitioner is no longer struggling or striving, but is simply walking away, embodying the essence of letting go through the simplicity of their action. And the ninth picture also illustrates the paradox of Zen, that in letting go of everything, the practitioner gains everything. And by releasing attachment to the self, the practitioner finds fullness of being, not through grasping or achieving, but through simply being. And in letting go of the search for enlightenment, the practitioner experiences the profound realization that enlightenment has always been present, within them and around them. And this is the essence of Zen teaching, that the way is beyond words, it is beyond letters. For it's not a matter of intellectual understanding. It's based in experiential achievement. So let's conclude. The ninth picture, returning to the source, it captures the essence of letting go in Buddha's practice. It marks the culmination of the journey towards enlightenment, where the practitioner no longer strives for liberation, but experiences the realization that they have always been free. And by walking away from the ox, the practitioner demonstrates the deep understanding that the pursuit of spiritual attainment is not about gaining something external, but rather about releasing the illusions that obscure the true nature of reality. And in letting go, the practitioner returns to the source, to the inherent purity and spontaneity of being, where there is no need for attachment, there is no need for control, there is no need for definition. So the ninth picture, the ninth oscillating picture, is not just an image. It's a profound invitation to experience the freedom and the peace that comes from truly letting go. I hope this has been of benefit to you today.